Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and look, it's Austin, the Day Ghost. Hello, Austin.
What's up?
It's time once again for the ReQuest, and tonight's request comes from John Early, and he asked us to go all the way back almost 60 years to 1963 to review an Audrey Hepburn movie with Cary Grant called Charade. And this is a movie that I probably had heard of, but had no idea what it was. And it was kind of fun walking into this completely blind. And Hepburn is an actress that I've always meant to see some of her stuff, and I don't think I've ever actually sat down and watched a Hepburn movie. This is a period that I'm more familiar with genre stuff than I am with like romantic comedies and just straight up dramas and things. Like the major important stuff that people go back to and remember this from this period. Some Hitchcock and things, but these kinds of movies I haven't seen a lot of. And I mean, I say that this watches kind of genre, and we'll talk about that. But really glad to finally get my feet wet more with this kind of thing, and. Austin, have you ever seen any Cary Grant or Audrey Hepburn?
No, I've at least heard of Audrey Hepburn, but I don't know who Cary Grant is.
I figured you'd mispronounce Cary Grant on purpose as well.
Oh no, I didn't. I wasn't clever enough to think of a good switcheroo on that one. But Cary Grant, I've never seen in anything. Although I probably should see some like Hepburn stuff. Like obviously I know My Fair Lady is really big, stuff like that, but I've never seen any of that.
Well, that I've seen, now that I'm thinking about it.
Clip of it. And I've seen the Simpsons parody like a million times.
But... Of course. No, that's a wonderful film. I actually kind of forgot that was her because it's been a long time since I've seen that. But
she's like in disguise.
Yeah. I mean, is it okay to have favorite things that you've only seen once so you don't remember much about them? You know what I mean? Because I always think of that as one of my favorite musicals, but I've only seen it the one time, so...
Yeah. Well, if you've only seen, like, one musical, then that makes sense.
I've seen more musicals. I've just only seen that one time. Anyway... So, thanks to John Early for making us watch this movie. This was an absolute delight, I thought. I really enjoyed sitting down and seeing this, and I was really into it in the first couple of minutes. Like, it's got a really cool title sequence, and then it starts getting into dialogue, and it's real quippy, it's real bantery. I was really kind of blown away by it right away, and it sucked me right in, and I had a ton of fun with it. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk to Austin about. Austin, would you tell us a little bit about the story? This is it's kind of a blend of a lot of different genres, right? It's a mystery movie. It's a romantic comedy. It's kind of a thriller in places. It's referred to a lot by critics as the greatest Hitchcock movie that Hitchcock didn't make. And I was thinking Hitchcock right away with those titles, and then apparently everybody made that connection, and it's kind of like that all the way through. But yeah, Austin, give us a brief synopsis, would you?
Yeah. This movie's basically got like the same love affair for Hitchcock that like early James Bond does. And they're like those three things are very of a piece, I think.
And there's some Bond in it too, certainly.
Well, and this came out a year after the first movie, so like it's very like around the same time.
Oh, I guess that's true. Yeah, because I always think of I always forget how relatively late the Bond movies start, because I know that Thunderball is like 66, and I always think there's more of them by then. But Thunderball's only what, 3?
It's
4. 4. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway.
Yeah, so Charade is about a woman that is...
You know what, real quick, I think I can say there's Bond in it even if it's not influenced, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying, like yeah. I don't have to say it's influenced by Bond to look at this and go, it feels like a Bondian thing.
Well, it's very much like what you always talk about with the Nolan Batman movies with the Daniel Craig Bond, is that they're both kind of going at each other in a way where this is clearly looking at Dr. No, and then some Bond films after this are very much looking at this.
And also something's just in the air in the 60s where there's a lot of spy thriller things being made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And and also some comedic ones. And television is being inundated with that, with shows like I Spy and stuff.
Yeah, and like Avengers and stuff like that. Yeah. So Charade is about a woman who is getting a divorce. She meets a guy who is also divorced, and her husband ends up being thrown off a train. It turns out he's the spy, or not a spy. He's like a because I think that's what I was thinking the whole time. I'm like, oh, it's basically a spy movie, but he's not technically a spy.
Well, it is a spy movie, but you don't know for sure it is until the end. That's what's cool about it is there is a spy that's been there the whole time, but the hero of the story you don't realize is the hero until the end. We will spoil the crap out of this, by the way. It's a 60-something-year-old movie, and I'm sure a lot of folks that would think to click on this have seen it, but if you haven't, just know we're both, well, I don't want to say we're both. I'm recommending this. I think this is great. I don't know where Austin is with it yet, but you may not want to listen past Austin side flip. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Austin.
So she finds out her husband has been killed, and there's like a great deal of money that he had that all these people want, and then it's everybody's just trying to get the money and figure out where it is, and hijinks ensue.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to talk about any specifics with this without unraveling the whole thing, right?
It's like pretty tight in that way, and that once you start peeling back a layer, it kind of all peels back.
Yeah, a lot of really good setup and payoff, a lot of stuff that's introduced early that you're not expecting to come back, that ends up being really important. You didn't realize it. This feels like one of those movies that is really begging for a second watch, and I've only had a chance, obviously, up to this point to see it once, but I kind of imagine I'll appreciate this even more on a second viewing. But it's one of those movies that that's trying to keep you guessing. I'm curious to see what parts Austin might have called and might not have. My experience was I thought I knew what was happening, and then it would throw in a monkey wrench and make you go, but maybe it's this, and I'm going, okay, like, I feel like this is maybe a red herring or something, but maybe it'll turn out that it's the thing that it's trying to make you think it is, or maybe it's not. And then when I got to the end, one of the big twists I absolutely called, but it made me think I was wrong a bunch of times before I got there, which is always a fun experience to have.
So in terms of that,
yeah,
I called everything in this movie.
Did you really?
But with 30% accuracy. And what I mean by that is that I called everything, but every time we introduced something, I was like, okay, it's going to do this, or this. And so I would get everything, but because I was going so broad, there was like 18 different things for like each character where they didn't go.
I also think it's important to put yourself into time and place and to have some historical perspective and remember that there's been 60 years of murder mystery stories.
Oh, I think that is a negative.
Oh, like, sure, absolutely.
I was with it the whole time. And it was definitely like,
but I'm just suggesting
which parts am I going to be right on?
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that if you've seen this in 63, you might not have had some of the thoughts that you had of where things might go because of things that you saw after this. You know what I mean?
Oh, certainly. Like one of the big things I called, which I think is the one that you did towards the end with
Walter Matthau. Who's in everything in this period, and especially stuff I really like. This movie is no Face in the Crowd. I feel like those are unfair things to compare. But I saw that for the first time maybe a year ago, and it's now I'm still calling my favorite movie of all time. And this is good. It's not in that league, but he's in it. He's great like he always is.
Yeah, well, that one was like, oh man, I'm sad that I called that one. I didn't want him to be evil. I like Walter Matthau.
You know what, though? I felt like if he didn't turn out to be evil, I would have questioned many things he did.
Oh, certainly.
Because he seemed kind of evil to me. But anyway, we'll get into some of those specifics maybe in a little bit. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, I guess.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I'm definitely flipping green on this one. I think I was trying to put together where I would put it on my list because I've been ranking all the ReQuest movies.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I think I have it as third right now.
Oh wow, that
It's
high.
pretty high up. Yeah, no, I really liked this movie.
Well, and we keep talking about how you guys that have given us requests, and we've been doing this together for maybe a year already. Has it been that long, or 8 or 9 months?
It's been a while, yeah.
But I mean, we've done at least 20 shows, if not more,
I
with
think even more than
movies.
that. I think just movies alone. Let me see, because I have it just right on my
Yeah, I thought
phone.
that was a conservative estimate. It's probably more like 25 or 30.
Yeah, probably something like that. Yes, we have 19 just movies. So
Yeah, and
ignoring shows and
we've done
TV
TV
shows.
shows, we've done comics. So a lot of you guys that have made requests have suggested things that we ended up really loving, and the bar for this show is very high. So if he's got, I think, so if I mean, this show has introduced a couple of movies that I would say are some of my favorite things now, and introduced Austin to what he is, I think, unabashedly calling his favorite film of all time, which is Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Beyond the Valley of the Dolls is wonderful. Okay, I bought that like the next day after we recorded it.
I want to buy a copy of this, honestly.
Oh yeah, I would pick this up. I was thinking about it too. I was like, I need to pick up this and Seven Samurai at some point too.
Oh yeah, and Seven Samurai. Yeah. So I'm just saying that if Austin put it third on his list, that's quite the compliment to the film and the choice. Brightburn.
And Seven Samurai and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls are the two that are above it.
Brightburn just put in a super chat. He's our requester. That's John Early. He says released same year as From Russia with Love, 1963. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's definitely like in that time we're starting to get that kind of trio. I think of, or maybe it's not a trio because it's more like two things. This and Bond that are like really, really in love with Hitchcock thrillers.
Yeah. Well, I think the movie does. One of the best things about it is, of course, its blend of comedy and like quirky comedy and really kind of subtle deadpan comedy, like language comedy. You're talking about My Fair Lady. Like this is weirdly kind of like that in that a lot of it is about language and weird turns of phrase and double entendres and stuff, and it opens doing to like tell you right away this is going to simultaneously be kind of a quirky comedy, but it's also going to be more violent than you might expect. More, kind of heavier or scarier than you might expect. There's a weird intensity to the stakes in this movie, I think. And the most impressive thing to me is that it's able to balance those things because they don't feel like they should go together, but it works. So right away, the movie opens with here's this guy that gets killed in front of a train. Just go. And like a lot of murder mysteries open that way, but then right away we just get into this. After the really fun title sequence, which I think also is trying to set you up for both of those things, and then because it feels like kind of a thriller opening, but it's also weirdly bouncy, and then
well, it's cool that it's the same year as From Russia with Love because that also has a big famous train sequence.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that, so I forgot about that. But yeah, it's like here's a guy who gets killed in front of a train, and again, lots of murder mysteries will do that, where maybe the whole thing isn't real intense, but it does keep winding back to that tone. While at the same time it's this romantic comedy, and my worry was that it was going to very quickly get watered down by the rom-com aspect of it, and that it wouldn't allow itself to go to those places again. And I know some contemporary reviews kind of complained that it gets as dark, and from their perspective at the time, like relentless is too strong of a word, but you know what I mean. Just the kind of like intensity of it. It's almost like if you were watching like a You've Got Mail, and then all of a sudden Jack Bauer shows up. Like that kind of intensity. It's weird, but it works, and it shouldn't.
No, it's like a spy version of So I Married an Axe Murderer. Yeah, no, because a lot of the rom-comminess of it feels like that more like Bond love interest thing, so it doesn't really feel as much like a rom-com to me in that way.
Okay.
And then the actual like comedy bit of it, I think works with the darker spy stuff because it's not like we stop to do skits or like weird situational comedy. It's just very like tete-a-tete, like dialogue between people.
And it doesn't feel overly wholesome, but
Yeah,
it's not. But it's not like a ton of sexual innuendo and stuff either. Like,
yeah, it's not full Bondian in that way.
yeah. Well, I guess I was getting more of the typical rom-com from it because the whole movie is from the woman's perspective.
No, that's true too. Maybe
Like,
if I watched it again, I would be thinking about it more so because going in, I didn't realize it was like a rom-commy thriller. So it was just kind of like, oh, it's like a cool spy movie, which like it's from the point of view of the Bond girl.
well, and again, I came in cold too, but because it was Hepburn, I assumed it was going to go more in the rom-com direction, and that would be most of what the movie was about. So I was kind of surprised by the opening shot, but then when immediately we get into the situation of she is wanting to divorce her husband and doesn't like divorce, and then he's been murdered. Now I'm thinking, okay, there's maybe a little bit of like dark, bleak comedy in this, but it's going to be all about. It's going to be kind of like British dark humor, where it's going to be about this woman who is trying to move on from her dead husband with this kind of deadpan guy that maybe will turn out to be too much like him. Like I thought that's where we were going because she doesn't like that her husband doesn't tell her anything, and she's all about the truth. And then the guy that she falls in love with is just like that, except more fun to be around, I guess. Which made me somewhat question the relationship. And we can get into this later, but if I have any major negative at all, it's that I'm not sure that her falling in love with him isn't a little rushed, and I don't know if I 100% buy that relationship by the end. And I've read up on this, and Cary Grant is partly to blame for that, but I completely get where he was coming from, and I think what he did to it needed to be done to it, so... Anyway, but we can talk about all that.
Yeah, see, I think for me, being like as big of a Bond fan as I am, I didn't really question a lot of that stuff. It was like, yeah, it's just kind of one of those movies. Like, I don't really believe them as a romance, but like, I don't believe Bond in any of the Bond girls either. Like, it's just that kind of a thing. So it sectioned its way perfectly into something that I'm into. So it's like, yeah, like that's definitely an issue, but I don't really care.
But I was seeing the relationship stuff is more credible than it is in Bond because he's the main character and she's there just to serve, him as the protagonist of the piece, and it's backwards here. Like he's sort of like at first it seems like he's a supporting character for her, or that it might be a dual protagonist story. And then the movie wants you to keep thinking at various points that he might actually be the bad guy and that he might be the murderer. Because like Austin mentioned earlier with the synopsis, there are these three guys that all want the money that, like, it's like $250,000.
Yeah, it was very much like an episode of The Simpsons where you find out that Grandpa, Mr. Burns, and like a few other guys, they were in this military platoon, and they like get all these like paintings that are worth a lot of money, and they're like, okay, like whoever is the last person standing gets all the money. But in this, it's...
I wonder if that's a direct parody of this. I don't know.
I wondered. I looked it up, and I can't find anything that says that.
Okay,
but
weird.
I did wonder it. Yeah, so there's 5 soldiers, and they find money, and they're going to split it between all of them. And then I guess one of them has it, and he's kind of holding on to it. And then he's the husband, and
that's the husband. Yeah, and he's the first person who gets murdered. And then each of them get picked off throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
exactly.
in their
And
pajamas, which doesn't seem to actually be for any reason other than it's kind of amusing.
For what, sorry?
That they all get killed in their pajamas except for the last guy.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
that's one of the things that they all have in common, as if that's part of the MO, but I don't actually think it is. I think it's just a coincidence, but I'm not totally sure.
I do like the cop because there's a French cop in this movie who reminded me of, and I wanted to look it up, so it might even be the same actor, and I don't know, but it reminded me of the old TV show Poirot, the Agatha Christie detective character.
I was
reminded me a lot of
thinking,
the original guy that played him, but sorry,
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
was thinking about that movie through a lot of this, and apparently comparisons were made to Agatha Christie contemporarily too. So like that if it wasn't an influence, people were making the comparison, and it was seeming similar, and it's
Yes.
plotted a little like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Where
Yeah,
it's real tight, and everything seems to kind of come together at the end. And there's kind of that question of, are some of the details like a little bit too easy and wrapped up in a bow by the end? I'm not sure until I see it again. Like, I kind of want to watch it again and see if everything really does line up now that I know what all the details are supposed to be. Because in a thing like this that keeps you guessing the whole time, where it's always weird to watch mysteries, because whenever you're getting exposition, you don't know if it's unreliable or not. So it's like, I'm learning things, but am I actually learning things, or are they going to change at the end? And several things change in this, because it's all about identity, and our main guy that Audrey Hepburn is falling in love with will go by 4 different monikers throughout the movie, and by the end she talks about it like she's fallen in love with 4 different people, kind of. And every time you get a new alias, you're supposed to think that that's the real guy, and it's not gonna. There's a bug in front of me. It's not gonna be the actual real guy until the very, very end, and so I think that there is sometimes a cheat that can happen with mysteries, where, because it's constantly throwing you for loops, it's easy to do sleight of hand tricks with details that don't actually really work out by the end, where it all comes together and makes sense. I don't think this is doing that. I think it all works, but I need to see it again to be sure.
Well, with the identity thing, that's probably one of my favorite joke moments, is because Walter Matthau is also got a fake identity, and there's a
Yep.
like a standoff between him and Gary Grant at the end, where they're both holding guns.
Gary Grant.
Yeah, and Aubrey.
Could you hear that, by the way?
Could I hear what?
Oh, just huge crack of thunder outside.
Oh no. That's good. The heat's finally broken for you, I guess.
That was mixed. It's not a crack of thunder. It's a crack of light. It was thunder, and it was loud. Yeah, it was crack-a-thoom. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a gnat or something. Anyway, it's summertime. Bugs get in the house.
Dancing.
You
Feeling
make me
the joy of
feel like
life.
dancing. I'm just doing some. I need chopsticks. I'm doing some Mr. Miyagi.
This is a weird show tonight.
It's one of those days. Let's get back into the review, shall we?
One of those days, Alice.
One of the things that's fun about Walter Matthau's character, again, we're going to spoil everything, is he turns out to be a character that you're supposed to think has been dead the whole time. And I don't know if you had this, but when I got to the end and he says, I'm really, what's the last name?
Dial,
thank you. Because we're told that there's a brother of. This is gonna be impossible to follow and track if you've not seen the movie. But we're told that there's supposed to be a brother of the guy who died in the military that originally was with them and got the gold, right? And that's supposed to be Cary Grant. And then we'll find out that he's not actually the brother, and that there was no brother. But when Walter Matthau comes out and says, I'm Dial, I thought he was the brother initially.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was like, oh, there really was a brother, and it's Matthau. And it took me a minute to go, oh no, he's the dead guy who was not dead and made it out, but somehow has concealed his identity this entire time.
Yeah, he was just off getting some frosty chocolate milkshakes, and nobody knew where he was.
That struck me as unlikely and far fetched, but fine for a thing like this. Like, this is heightened enough that it can get away with stuff like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
When you've got scenes like, I mean, I hesitate because it's too easy to go to this place, especially with us on this channel. But like, so I hesitate to say like comic book. But when you have scenes like the fight between not Dial, Cary Grant, claiming to be a guy named Dial, versus the guy with the hook for a hand,
which is so James Bond.
Which is so James Bond. He's on top of a roof. They're on top of a roof with like neon signs surrounding it, and it's shot in the most like stylistic, almost comic-y way possible. Like that kind of thing is setting the tone so that you can get away with some of these more far-fetched kinds of details. And as long as it all comes together at the end and isn't like a series of conveniences, it totally works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's also one of those big, like, yeah, this is just a Bond movie moments, is when, because he drops that guy off a roof, and like his hook catches on the edge of the roof, and then he leaves, and then he goes back to Audrey Hepburn, and she's like, oh, what happened to you and that one guy? And he's like, oh, I left him hanging. I could hear Connery's delivery of that line when he said it.
Yeah, it's like a one-liner.
Yeah, exactly. That's your one-liner after you beat the henchman character.
Well, and he's got a lot of great one-liners. I mean, she's almost in a weird way playing his straight man, even though he's so deadpan. But like, he's kind of quirky, and he's just got this kind of eccentric sense of humor. But because he might be the bad guy, it sometimes plays a little ominous before it plays like totally comedic. It's like a backdoor Bond movie. It's as if you've never seen a James Bond, and I'm not saying that this guy is the character James Bond, although I think Cary Grant absolutely could have played James Bond.
Yeah, there's definitely similarities to it.
Yeah, like if Adam West could do Bond, and he almost got that part. Like, as far as American actors of the day go, like, he absolutely could have been James Bond, like a decade earlier if there had been James Bond movies. Because
he's probably the only holdup is
because he's 60 at this point, and he's too old to be Bond, and he's frankly too old to be Audrey Hepburn's love interest. But he knows it, and I alluded to this earlier, but Cary Grant is the reason that there's any discussion at all about how much older he is than her, because he was really uncomfortable with it. Because he's 60, she's 25, playing a 25-year-old character. She's like 30, the actress is 33, and so he's old enough to be her dad, and so he's the reason that they talk about how much older he is, and that she pursues him, and that he's a little resistant and doesn't come on to her real hard. And obviously they both fall in love with each other by the end, and he's not like fully resisting her, but I think he's more sympathetic and more likable, especially once you know he's not the killer. Because he does that, I think it goes a long way to making that age gap a little bit more palatable. But like, that all happens because Cary Grant didn't like it.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting, because going back to like Bond, it's not as weird, I don't think, because of how it's played, than like the later Roger Moore movies, where he's also like really old and the Bond girls are way younger than him.
Yeah.
Like his last movie, that was like part of the moment when he was like, "Oh, I think I'm done with this." Is his love interest in the movie, like that actress's mom showed up to set and she was younger than him.
Yeah. That's when you know maybe it's time to hang it up.
Yeah. Because he's definitely quite a bit older than her in this movie, but it doesn't feel as weird to me, and I think it's just how both actors play it, and the movie knows that he's too old for her.
See, that's why it works, but if it weren't for Grant, I mean, as Daniel Davis says there in the comments, he wouldn't have even done the movie if they hadn't had her be the one that's chasing him. Daniel Davis, I read about that too. But, so, I mean, you have to give him a lot of credit for that, because that they reworked the script to put that in. What I wanted to ask you if you would be kind of creeped out by it, or just thought it was weird that there's no discussion about it, if she just fell for him and he looks like he's 60 years old and they never talk about it. Because I have that even with this isn't anything like this kind of movie, but I mean, in that it's a romantic comedy, I guess, but like, I have this with things like that early 2000s or mid 2000s Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man, where like Jim Carrey is, and I forget, is that Zoe? I can't remember who that actress is. Is that who that is? She looks way younger than him, and the movie is kind of, it feels like it's just sort of pretending like he's still the age he was when he first started making movies like this. Like,
he just wants to be a 90s movie.
Yeah, it's just a 90s movie. He's still the age he was when he made Liar Liar. No, he's not. And so, like, I appreciate that this movie, actually responds to that, but, like, do you think it would have worked if they just never talked about it?
Probably not. I would probably be weird, like a bit weirder about it. But like just the way it plays, like I'm not really thinking about it too often either. Like it's just kind of like, yeah, these are just two characters that get along.
Yeah, I wasn't early on until she starts coming on to him, and then I'm like, I'm just not sure I'm buying this, and then I'm thinking, is it supposed to be some kind of a because it plays real romantic, and I think this is actually a perfectly romantic film. There's some great dialogue, like the bit where there's just a lot of really good back and forth. The bit where she says, "Do you know what's wrong with you?" And he says, I don't what? And she says, nothing. And then that just feels like a real classic kind of romantic exchange, right? And I'm kind of in the moment going, I like that. That's really nice. And then the very next scene is the first place where you're supposed to be questioning he might be the murderer. That's fantastic. And like now she's scared of him, but having to pretend like she's still interested in him. And then later, they turn it around where he's got her believing that he's on her side again, and then something else happens later on where once again she thinks that he might be the murderer and after her, and there's this long foot chase where you think he might actually be trying to kill her,
which is
but wasn't. It's great.
Yeah. No, that stuff's really good. The part you just mentioned, I think, is right before one of the strangest things in the movie for me.
Yeah.
Which is that, yeah, you get like the really good like back and forth and banter, and it's very comedic in that way. And then suddenly he turns into like Mr. Bean in a shower scene. It's really strange.
See, but I like that because it's really weird. But I like it because it's like
funny. It's just bizarre.
Look how
all I can think of is Mr. Bean and the way he moves.
It's like, look, so he takes a shower fully clothed. Yeah. And it's supposed to just be this kind of, like, again, quirky, eccentric, comedic thing he does, and this is how he charms women, where he just does really, like, kind of childlike things. Not childish. He's not, like, horribly immature. He just, behind closed doors without anybody around, he just gets silly. And I think a lot of women really do go in for that. Like, I don't think I'd be married if a lot of women didn't like that. Didn't like it when men can be silly, and because there's a particular kind of vulnerability with that. I think, like, it rang true to me, is what I'm saying. That was a bit where I went, okay, I can kind of see her falling for him, just not as fast as she did. Like, it's a little bit too quick to "I love you," even though I know nothing about you, and I don't like that you're lying to me all the time, because that's what the problem is. That's what her husband did. And so, this was the point I was trying to get to earlier. I was wondering, even as charming as it plays, if maybe, and then I was like, okay, I'm reading too far into this. This is clearly not what the movie is doing. But I started thinking, like, I'm reaching. I started thinking, maybe the idea is that she has this kind of mental hang-up, where it's almost like a traumatic thing where she keeps going after men who, even though she doesn't like they lie to her, that's what she's attracted to. And so she found another guy that's like that, and it's this kind of complex she has. If it is a complex, the movie doesn't know it. Because when you get to the end, it's supposed to be great that they're getting together, even though he's been 4 different people, and she still can't be 100% sure that he's not lying about something. And so it seems a little disturbing to me. At the same time, this is supposed to be really charming. And it is charming, but I'm also going, I'm not sure how healthy this is.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. I think the ending sells itself for me because it's really.
Do you like the split screen?
Well, yeah. So it's like hysterically funny because she's like, "Oh, you changed your name. Like, how do I know it's real? Like, prove it that this is who you are." And he's like, "Oh, I can prove it. I can prove it by signing the marriage license." And she's like, "Oh, marriage license!" And then the screen like shrinks down, and then like 5 other random scenes appear around it with like seemingly no reason as to why they were picked, and it's brilliant.
It's not no reason, because it's the times where he was the 4 other people.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't even really thinking about
that. Because when
like,
it comes up, they go through the names.
Oh, okay.
And they're like, this...
I missed that,
when he was this name, and this name, and this name. Like, you're marrying all these people, and it kind of is the idea. Yeah. And I like the joke that his real name is the crappiest one. And that's where she's like, it'd just be my luck that I'd be stuck with that name. Your real name... She basically comes out and says your real name sucks.
Yeah, she does basically. But it just made me laugh.
It's so good.
It's like, this is how you got divorced in the first place, lady, by being like, "I'll marry you." You just met.
Oh, I'm glad that John brought this up because John early, because I forgot about this. He says, "What about the scene where they go grab the orange without touching it with their hands?" As far as like weird scenes.
Oh yeah, no, that feels like an early Bond thing where they'll just like go somewhere and like film something weird like that, like the just out of nowhere gypsy fight in the middle of From Russia with Love.
Which again, same year.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with anything. We found something that was kind of interesting and we filmed it, and.
But this at least is still moving story along, because it gets weirdly tense in that scene when one of the guys after the gold that you think she might be in danger from, because they all threaten her, and she gets threatened 3 times in a row in the same building, and that stuff I thought was truly unnerving, like from her perspective. And I made it the thumbnail because it bothered me. The bit with the guy that's dropping the matches, that's so good.
Oh yeah, no, it's awesome, and I think that's why while watching it, I wasn't like, "Oh, this is a romantic comedy." It was just, it's like a Bond movie. Like it's just, it's that kind of a thriller. And
that's what I was gonna say earlier. Is I love how it's like a backdoor Bond movie, because you could, if you watch this a second time, it would be really easy to fill in the gaps in your mind and cast Cary Grant as the actual protagonist, as the hero of the piece, because he is, but you don't know it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
exactly.
All of those scenes play differently when you have the context of who he really is, and that he's working for the government the whole time, that he actually is a spy. Because it is, like I said earlier, it is a spy movie. But you don't know that for sure, so it feels like Bond. It feels like a spy thing. You've been pointing out almost every scene we brought up, you've been able to parallel to a Bond movie, and I've been and while I was watching it, I was paralleling it like visually and tonally, and certain situations seemed kind of similar. But because my protagonist was this woman who's trying not to get killed, who might not have any friends. It's not watching like the formula of a Bond movie, but then it totally fits into that once you know exactly. that the guy she's wanting to get with is in fact your James Bond the whole time. And I keep thinking, well, maybe he is, and then if he, like, I'm already seeing it, and if he is, then here's how it's a Bond movie. But he easily could have turned out to be the killer at the end, and the only thing that made me think that he probably wasn't going to be is they keep stringing you along with it, going back and forth. It would have been a gut punch, I think, at the end if it turned out that it really was, because they kept trying to make you think it was. So, so I kind of had like that Mask of the Phantasm thing with the ex-boyfriend guy of Andrea, who you're supposed to think is Phantasm. Where I'm like, they're putting him in your face too much. There's no way that guy's Phantasm. Like I had that with him, where I'm like, there's no way he's the killer. But then they kept making me go, well, there's like a 20% chance. And so when you get to the end and he's not, I'm like, if he turned out to have been, if he pulled a gun on her in the scene with Mathau, and it turned out that Mathau really was working for the government, he was the government agent the whole time like he pretended, first of all, he's the worst government agent in the history of government agents, if that's the case. How in the world, I kept thinking, if he's real, is he not giving her any kind of protection? Like, he's not putting her in any program or anything? There's a scene where she goes, sorry, I'm jumping around. There's a scene where she goes, well, I guess I'll put myself, in harm's way for the good of my country. And he's like, that's the spirit? Like, that's the right attitude? Like, he is the worst government agent. He can't possibly, that's the big thing I called, is he can't possibly actually be a government agent. But anyway, so once you have it all, by the end, yeah, it's a backdoor Bond movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Bond from the point of view of the Bond girl.
And she's wonderfully proactive, and like, she's not too damsel in distress, even though she is by definition a damsel in distress. But like, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, because like, that's your story. Somebody's after this person, yeah, and they're not after her because like she's a weak woman that they can, easily, and there's some typical stuff with her, don't get me wrong. The thing at the end, like, oh, you're gonna marry me? Like, yeah, okay. It's 1963. Really no, it is really funny. But like, the fact that she's a woman running from people that might be trying to kill her is not too typical, and I don't think, like, dates it too hard or anything. Because it's not because she's a woman, it's because she probably has this money. Like, she could have been a 300-pound, middle-aged man, and it wouldn't have been the same movie, but those people would have still been after her.
Yeah, exactly. No, like, it makes sense for the character that she's not, running around with a gun. She's not Halle Berry and Die Another Day.
Daniel Davis says she gets involved with the climax. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And one thing I really liked about her, and this is a bit where I found her really sympathetic, is she is really perturbed, of course, in the scene where she gets threatened by all three of those guys in a row, and in a place where she thinks she's safe, and she's rattled and freaked out, but she doesn't, like, get in a corner and cry. She's not super mousy. Like, she tries to get past it.
Strong, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, in that way, it feels a lot better. Than some of the stuff around the same time. Like, she's not Mary Goodnight, the Bond girl from Man with the Golden Gun, where she, like, James Bond's working on a thing and she, like, backs up into a button that, like, turns a laser.
Yes!
At him. And
she makes the third act happen! She makes the whole climax at the end happen!
Yeah, and she's also supposed to be an agent, but she's, like, a complete idiot.
Yeah, she's a buffoon! I forgot about that!
Yeah.
And it's not even what does this button do, she just backs into it.
Yeah, she just sits on it. And that's like probably about 10 years later,
No, this, like, Hepburn is super competent, and of course, you would have had to cast somebody else if she wasn't, because she just exudes that confidence, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you could have easily cast her as a master manipulator kind of character in a thing like this. There was a point where I wondered if somehow she was going to be the murderer. I had that for 3 seconds.
That was when they go, oh, it was the stamps, and they're all gone. That was when it was like, oh, she was the one. Like, because the whole time I did have this part.
That would have been, like, nuts too, because she's your POV character. You're following her the whole time, and I'd be like, I don't know narratively how I feel about this, but if the whole point is just to throw me off, I mean, well done. Like,
I was thinking there's that, I forget what it's called. I remember it not being great, but there's that Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie like spy movie where it's he's like this guy that has this thing that, and everybody's trying to get, and she's a spy with him. And then at the end, it like turns out that he was actually the master manipulator villain, and he was just like
Oh,
acting stupid.
I've never seen that.
So I did have like that, like, oh, is that one of the ways it could go? I'm not sure. Like I said, I called everything but with 30% accuracy.
That's really funny. No, it was fun to keep guessing, but it was also fun just to not know who the good guys and bad guys were, and that doesn't always work at a thing like this. Like, it wasn't too
Exactly.
predictable, even though I knew some things. Even though I was right about stuff at the end, I didn't feel like I got cheated by anything or like let down. I don't know. It was pretty satisfying at the end. With, I guess, maybe the minor exception of Mathau, just because that seemed pretty obvious from the beginning.
I was just sad because I didn't want Walter Matthau to be evil.
But he was a horrible person from the very beginning.
I know, but
It's the only way it could have worked out.
I wanted her and him to get frosty chocolate milkshakes, and that to be the end.
Another thing
All I wanted.
Another thing I want to talk about, and I alluded to this earlier with the roof scene, which is spectacular. Like, I think maybe I'm overselling this. I love that scene so much. Like, just the way it's shot and the way they built that set. Like, it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
But set pieces in general are really good in this, and there's a surprising number of them. One of the coolest things, I think, is that the big, I guess I can't say climax, but kind of the penultimate to the climax, before you get to Mathau in the train station. No, it's just after that, I guess. It is the climax. What am I talking about? When they're in the theater.
Oh yeah, with the like the drop doors.
That's also a really wonderfully suspenseful scene, where Cary Grant is trying to, and this is the place where you go, okay, he has to be a real secret agent because he knows what he's doing. Like, the Walter Matthau is the bad guy now, and he is, and we know for sure everything that's happening now, and he is, and the way he dies is like gruesome. Like, that kind of messed with me a little bit, just like the way he lands on his legs, like, ugh. that just bothered me. But, does that like kill him outright? I assume it did.
So. I was waiting the entire time for him to walk over and shoot him. I was like, oh, he's got broken legs. That's gonna suck when he wakes up. Oh, I guess he's dead.
But anyway, just he's looking up at the doors and he's seeing the numbers, and he's trying to guess, like, with the footfalls, where exactly he's standing. And that whole thing was great. But what I really appreciated just narratively about that location is that it's characters playing roles the whole movie. Like, pretending to be different people, and not just Cary Grant, but really, in some ways, kind of everybody except for our protagonist is wearing a mask in different places and having different identities. And so, what better place but on a stage? And we've had a lot of kind of Shakespeare references and things throughout the movie, too. So there's already a little bit of an all the world's a stage kind of motif going on, and we've brought up Romeo and Juliet, and to, I think, kind of falsely foreshadow that this might be a tragic relationship, and then it doesn't go that way. I don't know, just the way Shakespeare and the idea of like characters playing people in a play is symbolically handled really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of my favorite lines, I sent it to you, was like in the first scene, pretty much after the credits, where she mentions Shakespeare. She says something, and she's like, "Oh, it's Shakespeare," and he goes, "No, no, it's not." How do you know it's not? Because that's terrible. You made it up.
Brightburn, Daltonaya Super Chat, do you prefer this over Breakfast at Tiffany's? Like I said earlier, I've never seen any of Hepburn's movies, and I've always meant to watch that, but I haven't. So I will try to get to that finally, but I don't know yet.
I've also never seen Breakfast at Tiffany's, which means it's the one thing Cap and I've got.
I just think it's funny that this movie came up because you and I have had this conversation.
The other day, too.
Yeah, really recently we had the Breakfast at Tiffany's conversation.
Yeah,
because
with Jason, because Jason said that bad Minecraft songs are the only thing he and I have in common that we like. And I went, yeah, it's the one thing we've got.
We were talking about how amusing it would be if you dated a girl who loved that song. And you also loved that song, but neither of you had ever seen the movie. So Breakfast at Tiffany's being a song about two people who love the film Breakfast at Tiffany's is the one thing you've got. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. That's my dream relationship. That's all I look for in a woman. To be completely opposite from me, but to like that song.
But to like that song! And she can't have seen that movie. Which means at the point you see that movie, you will ruin this whole thing.
Yeah, no, that's when we would get a divorce.
That's what your wedding reception would be? Like, you'd finally watch that movie? Like, at your wedding reception?
Wedding would just be that song just on loop.
Senior Sticks, $2 Super Chat, have you thought about writing a Netflix series? Not specifically.
I've had, like, online shows that I've made, and I've, like, had that thought, but, like, I don't know. And I don't really think I'd ever get to that point, but I definitely have wanted to make, like, YouTube shows.
Yeah, I don't really have the ambition, not that this has anything to do with what we're talking about, but I'll answer this real quick because it was in the Super Chat. Now it's Captain Logan Show for, a minute and a half. I have, when I was younger, I certainly had the ambition to write comics or write for television shows or write a movie or something. And it's not a thing that I would ever take, like, completely off the table, like, if I wrote something that I thought just really made sense to try to sell, because I thought it had potential. But I don't really have that ambition in the way I used to, because I think in some ways I'm just kind of too jaded about like, mainstream entertainment, where I don't want to see a thing get too horribly compromised. Like, not that I'm afraid of change and working with other people that can, improve something. And I understand to some degree compromises that have to happen. But, I don't want my name on something that's so far removed from the thing and then everybody hates it. And now, look, this guy wrote this horrible movie. I'm like, that's not the movie I wrote. I don't want that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of my, like, the big shows I wanted to do for years, it's like a big passion project for me, and I wouldn't want to be, like, in this fictional scenario, if I'm at Netflix with this, like, I wouldn't want, like, my big, like, dream project thing to be completely compromised. Like, that would suck.
Real quick, another bit of banter that I like, because I feel like we haven't talked enough about that, and I just wanted to give another example of it. Is the part, I don't know why this stood out to me, but the part where he says he gets, I think this is after he's gotten wounded on the roof. And or maybe it's before that, I can't remember. And Cary Grant to Audrey Hepburn says, "Would you like to see where I got tattooed?" And she says, "Sure." And he says, "Okay, we'll get in the car and go there." Just things like that I thought were really clever.
Yeah, there's a part where she's kissing him, and he's like, "Stop it!" And then she stops, and he's like, "Oh, well, that's not what I wanted. Like, I wanted to, like, fight with you a little bit more before you stopped."
Yeah, that kind of stuff is really romantic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that stuff's cool. Yes, it's very romantic, like David Ayer with Suicide Squad.
No, stop it. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about what we're talking about with Netflix shows, with things being compromised. What else have we not brought up that we need to? Anything you just didn't care for with this movie? Because you haven't lobbed a lot of negatives at it.
No, I was pretty much just with this, like, from start to finish. It was like, yeah, this is just like I said, it just slotted into, like, a thing that I like. So I don't know. It just worked for me. Like I said, I didn't even watch this thinking it was a rom-com.
Yeah, and that's like I said, in some ways, I don't want to say that's the weakest thing about it, because I also think it is a really good romantic comedy, but I do find myself thinking that she falls for him too quickly. And I think I'd have that even if he didn't have the age gap.
Mm-hmm. No, that is fair. I will say though, I will now cut off Diamonds Are Forever and place this into its spot, because the set of the hotel with the elevator looks very much like a similar set in Diamonds Are Forever. And I don't hate that movie like a lot of people do, but I'm just from now on going to imagine that this is there. I'm just going to put that there. When I go through all the movies again, I'll watch this instead.
So now that you mentioned the elevator, I'm gonna mention a really weird specific detail that I don't know if indulge me for a second. I don't know if anybody will appreciate this besides me, but I don't remember ever, and now I know I'm gonna hear it everywhere. I don't remember ever hearing this sound effect in any other movie until this one. But there's when I was a kid, I always thought this was so weird. There's this sound effect that in Batman '89, really early in the movie, with the elevator in Jack Palance's office, when the girlfriend gets off the elevator, she's got all the shopping bags, and there's this weird sound effect with the elevator that almost sounds like somebody screaming, where like it always stuck with me. But it drops, and there's just this kind of high pitched like whistle that's like it's like. And I'm like, was there a time period? Now I'm wondering if there was, like, a period of time where a lot of elevators had that. Because the elevators in this movie make that sound. And it's exactly the same, and I never heard it anywhere else.
Yeah, I don't even know offhand.
I feel like I'm learning things. Like, if I went in a time machine back to the 1950s, I bet any elevator I'd get off of, I'd hear that sound.
This is the Wilhelm.
Which makes me think that that sound effect was maybe put in really purposefully in '89 to continue to give it that timeless feel of like, let's throw in things from like 40s and 50s and 60s.
What if Tim Burton was just a big fan of this movie and he was like, you know what's really weird? The elevators in that movie make a really weird noise.
Let's throw that in this movie.
Hey, he's got the Wilhelm in it too. He's okay with throwing in weird screams.
Anyway, I really enjoyed this. Hepburn is as brilliant as everybody's always said she was, and now I almost just want to go through her catalog. She's so good in this.
Mm-hmm. You think she's got it?
I do. I really do. I mentioned this to you in text, but I think she would have maybe made for a good Catwoman. And I think Lee Merriweather in the 60s Batman movie is channeling her a little bit. Especially in the Kitka scenes. Like, she is almost doing a Hepburn voice, but if she was Russian. Like, she's putting on this really fake Russian accent, but it also sounds a little Hepburnish. Which I didn't have until I saw this.
I've watched that movie, but I'll have to... Because I'd also like to go through some of her movies now, because I've never seen them. That's a blind spot for me that I should fill in. And then I'd have to rewatch that movie, because I've only seen it the one time.
John said that he picked this because it was recommended on DJ's channel, and DJ and Connor are both big fans of this movie. And I'm glad that we finally saw it, so I can talk to them about it, because Connor says this is one of his favorites, and for good reason. It's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can see him liking this.
Well, and of course for cinematography and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Like,
well,
one
folks,
of the best shot rom-coms.
Yeah, I love how you seem almost blindsided. Oh, you know what? You're right. It is a rom-com.
Yeah, because it's like, yeah, I guess it is, but that's not how I watched it.
Well, I had that almost the other way with the spy thriller thing. Where at the end he's a spy, and I'm like, I guess it was a spy thriller.
See,
I was getting that more, obviously.
I had it filled in so much that I was like, oh yeah, her husband was a spy the entire movie, but he wasn't.
But he wasn't.
So, like, to the point that even when I started to do the synopsis for this, I was like, oh yeah, her husband was a spy. It was like a thing. And not really, though.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought that that's where that was going to have to go. No, I kind of liked that he was just not a great guy.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
he was kind of a bad person, and she had every reason to divorce him.
Yeah, he's always lying. I was
But
such
so
a
is our
failure, and then we got
hero.
cut off with like the craziness. But one of my favorite lines from
Yeah.
Hepburn is when Walter Matthau, when he reveals himself, and she's just like both of you people are like constantly changing your identities in like the last 4 days or whatever. It's pretty good.
Oh, so I was just about to end the video. My apologies. I'm going to mention one more thing. Because I don't remember ever seeing this in a movie, and I thought it was kind of an inventive way to handle it, and like it's a little jarring because you can tell what's happening, but I kind of appreciated the technical aspect of it, where they're in a boat, and they're going under tunnels
Oh, with the sound,
with the sound, yeah.
yeah, that was pretty cool.
Where they put this like reverb thing on it, or maybe parts of it they just recorded in a different kind of room. I really wasn't totally sure how they did it.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, it's either rear projection or green screen. It looks green screen, and
I assumed it was rear projection, but
I'm not sure. And but clearly they're in a room and not actually there. And there's these really scenic shots of, I guess they're in I guess they're still in France, right?
Yep.
Are they in France the whole time? Because
Yep.
there was a review of
except
this.
for the opening, but
There was a review of this that I saw that called it globetrotting, and I'm like, just because it's not set in America doesn't make it globetrotting. The whole thing takes place in one city. What are you talking about?
why?
And this was a period. This is a contemporary, like 1963 review.
Did you watch Charade?
But anyway, I just thought technically it was kind of interesting, the way the sound changes when they go into a tunnel and then come out of it, where suddenly it's kind of got reverb, like it sounds like they're talking into tin cans or something, and then it comes out.
Yeah, no, that is true. What is that? Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. What is that World War II movie we had to watch for ReQuest a while back? It was like something conspiracy, wasn't it? Or was it just called Conspiracy? I don't know.
Maybe it was, conspiracy. The Kenneth Branagh movie.
Yeah, that's my favorite globetrotting film.
It's a one room drama.
But it didn't take place in the U.S. of A., so it's globetrotting.
Or the one room gangster film we just watched a couple weeks ago. Is that a globe-trotting movie? The whole thing takes place in Chicago, but it's globe-trotting. Wasn't it Chicago?
Yeah. Yeah, the outfit, yeah.
The outfit, yeah. I can't remember any names of anything we've reviewed.
You know my favorite globetrotting movie is? Scooby-Doo meets the Harlem Globetrotters.
12 Angry Men, that's a good globe-trotting movie.
Yeah. All great picks. The movie Room.
Room?
And The Room.
Okay, I'm going to close up the video now. Thanks a lot for being here, everybody, and thanks for watching after the fact. I hope you enjoyed our review, and leave a comment if you're so inclined and tell us what you think about Charade. I almost forgot the name of this movie, too. And we will be back with you again next week for another one, and Austin, we're doing another movie. And next time, we're going to do another comic review in a couple weeks, but I am switching a couple things around because I have so much comic stuff I have to do next week. There's no way I've got time for a third one. So I'm gonna wait and do it. And actually, that'll be a couple weeks after that, I think, because I have another. So I had to go on a trip last week, and I was gone all week. I have to do that one more time. I'm going to Florida in 2 weeks for another dance competition that my son has, and yeah, they stacked 2 of them on us this year.
And in Florida, you guys are really globetrotting.
We really are. Hey, more so than Charade did. Anyway, so next week we're gonna be doing Snowpiercer, which was
cool.
Requested by MattBat68, and I've had a lot of people tell me I need to see Snowpiercer. I don't know anything about that movie except that it was critically acclaimed, and I'm told a lot that I need to see it. So
I just know it's Chris Evans on a train.
now that you say that, I guess I knew that too. But just sitting here, I was like, I know that's an important movie. I don't know what's in it, but
That should have been the name of the title. Forget Snowpiercer. It should have been called Chris
Chris
Evans on a
Evans
train.
on a train.
I'm tired of this Chris Evans on a train.
Well, and Chris Evans is doing a lot of stuff right now, and he just had Lightyear come out, so kind of an interesting time to do a Chris Evans movie.
Well, I think he's got that new Russo. I think he's in the new Russo brothers film that comes out in maybe August.
I wasn't sure how soon that was, but I knew I was hearing other things about another project he had coming out. So
yeah, I think that's in August. I could be wrong about that.
Okay, well, once again, thanks a lot for watching, guys. We will see you again next week. I was Captain Logan. Oh, and let me also say, of course, that if you want to make a request, you can go to patreon.com/geekvolution. The $15 tier makes that possible. You can you can ask for a movie, a comic, or a TV pilot, or an episode of a show that you know we know, and you can subscribe for just 1 month, and we'll put you on the list. Or you can stay in the rotation if you want to keep doing it, and right now the wait is about 3 to 4 months. Anyway, we'll see you again soon. I was Captain Logan. This was Austin, the Day Ghost.
Just hang up before we get another thing that